Will poverty ever disappear? Hello, I am David Morales, a collaborator of the International Rescue Project. Welcome to this new series that will help you understand the 2030 Agenda and God's Agenda. We would like to share the answer to today's topic entitled, Will Poverty Ever Disappear? The world consumes itself, transforms itself, and exhausts itself with hundreds of millions of people suffering the consequences. That is why the heads of state, government officials, and many important representatives met at the headquarters of the United Nations in New York from September 25 to 27 in 2015. During this event, they planned the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, an action plan created in favor of people, the planet and prosperity, which is believed to strengthen universal peace. As presented, this plan will be implemented by all countries and stakeholders through a collaborative alliance. The 2030 Agenda sets out 17 goals with the purpose of freeing humanity from the tyranny of poverty and deprivation. To heal and protect our planet, they were planned to facilitate the bold and transformative measures that are needed. Member states of the United Nations approved a resolution in which they recognize that the greatest challenge in the world today is the eradication of poverty and affirmed that without achieving it, there can be no sustainable development. They outlined 169 integrative goals that covered the economic, social, and environmental spheres. But how do they plan to achieve it? Let's analyze some important points on this first item, which aims to end poverty in all its forms and throughout the world. Number 1. The agenda plans that between now and 2030, extreme poverty can be eradicated for everyone across the world. People living on less than US $1.25 a day are currently considered to be in extreme poverty. There are clearly millions of people in a state of poverty. And the plan is that by 2030 there will be no poverty. After considering each element in this objective, we must ask ourselves, will this be possible to achieve? Number 2. Implement national appropriate social protection systems and measures for all, including minimum levels. And, by 2030, achieve a broad coverage for the poor and vulnerable people. What does this mean? This means that everyone will have medical care and a minimum economic income. Will this be the solution to poverty, and can we eradicate it completely? Number 3. By 2030, ensure that all men and women, particularly the poor and vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources and access to basic services, ownership, and control over lands and other assets such as natural resources, new technologies, and financial services, including microfinance. Basically, create a credit system for everyone and create access to everything necessary to start a business. Let's reflect again. Will this be the solution to end poverty? Number 4. By 2030, reduce exposure to extreme climate-related phenomena and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters in the poor population. This has a good purpose, but will this system of care be the solution to poverty? Number 5. Ensure significant mobilization of resources from various sources, including through enhanced cooperation in development processes, to provide sufficient means for developing countries, particularly the least developed countries, and to implement programs and policies aimed at putting an end to poverty in all its dimensions. Big investment in less developed countries. Will this be possible? Number 6. Create gender-responsive and pro-poor development strategies to support accelerated investment in poverty-eradicating measures. Basically, the inclusion of all races in the financing and benefits systems. Will it be possible for this to eradicate poverty completely? These are very interesting and visionary objectives. But the question is, will poverty really disappear one day with these objectives? What do the scriptures say about the poor? In the Gospels, we see Jesus spending a considerable amount of time among the poor, serving them, encouraging them, and even defending them. He was carrying out the deep and rich Jewish biblical tradition of providing for those in need. I want to quote the book of Deuteronomy, where we see the God's tenderness with the vulnerable at each point in history. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. Dew. 10:18. Let us note that the sacred book records God's thoughts about the poor, and he has promised to defend the poor. And through whom does God care for the poor? I want to tell you a very special story. It is a story from the life of a man named George Muller. It was a morning like any other. The children from the orphanage where Muller worked were sitting at the table waiting for their breakfast. There were plates and cups, but they were all empty. There was no food. But George Muller said, "Let us thank God for this breakfast." George Muller never asked anything from anyone, except from God. Every morning, he got up early to pray. He asked God for everything the children needed in prayer. Sometimes God sent a large amount of money, and other times little arrived, but they never lacked in what they needed. That morning, while the plates and cups on the tables were empty, the children commented, "Papa George has trusted the Heavenly Father again and prayed for God to send us breakfast." Knock, knock, knock. Someone was suddenly knocking on the door. It was the baker, bringing baskets and trays full of bread. "I got up early," said the baker. "God told me I had to bring you bread." Oh, how delicious that freshly baked bread's aroma smelled. Milk and bread was what God sent to the orphanage that morning. The children happily ate their breakfast sent from heaven. Later, God provided food for lunch and dinner as well. From faith to faith, Muller helped many orphan children survive bouts of hunger. How wonderful it is to discover that God feels compassion for everyone who goes through times of need. God gave these principles to his people in the past so that they can continue echoing in our time. "If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother, but thou shalt open thine hand wide unto him, and shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need, in that which he wanteth." Deuteronomy 15:7-8. There was a principle that the Lord wanted to teach and implement amongst his people, the principle of attending those in need. This was not something to be ignored, and its care was vitally important. "Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh." Isaiah 58:6-7. We find such important principles in the Bible. You and I are the answer to those in need. You might feel that you are also in need, but I want to remind you that there will always be someone with greater needs than you. There is a verse that really catches my attention, and I want to share it with you. It answers our initial question: will poverty really disappear one day? "For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to thy needy in thy land." Dew. 15:11. The Holy Bible tells us that poverty will always exist on this earth. In the Bible, God invites us to help the poor and care for children who live in vulnerable situations. His heart hurts for those in need, and he asks us to act in their defense. This first goal of the 2030 Agenda seeks to end poverty, but the Holy Bible tells us that there will always be poor amongst us. There will always be someone in greater need than us, so that we can take time for them and show them sympathy, kindness, and generosity. The Bible is an inexhaustible source of encouragement and wisdom. There are many passages that tell us about God's love for the poor and needy, and our responsibility toward them. Jesus' life, as demonstrated in the Gospels, tells us about his love for children and for the vulnerable. Luke 4:18, Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised." Christ spent a large part of his time with the poor to help them understand something wonderful, that maybe they have needs and are poor as a fruit or result of man's sinful fall, but he, Jesus Christ, is the hope for the needy. He has made it possible that one day poverty and disease will be nitrogen monoxide more. Will poverty ever end? What else does the Holy Book tell us? Human efforts to help the poor have achieved very little, but God will tackle the root of the problem: human selfishness and governments that often only seek their own interests. All this have I seen, and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man ruleth over another to his own hurt. Ecclesiastes 8-9. Our Creator will soon establish his heavenly government on earth and give humans everything they need, without discriminating or overlooking anyone. The Bible makes it clear that the King of God's kingdom will generously meet the needs of humanity. The earth will be a paradise with space for everyone to have a home. No one will hunger. There will be no trace of poverty left. In the book of Isaiah in the Bible, God promises that his servants shall not build, and another inhabit. They shall not plant, and another eat, for as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Isaiah 65-21-22. Instead of struggling to get the basics and barely survive, we will all enjoy abundant food and many other good things that God will give us. And in this mountain shall the Lord of hosts make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of wines on the lees well refined. Isaiah 25-6. It is only there, in that moment when we become Christ's heirs through eternity, that scarcity and poverty will exist nitrogen monoxide more. As long as sin exists, our societies will continue suffering poverty and death. But I want to share that it is through our great friend Jesus that we find hope for the oppressed. I invite you to be part of God's project, and that, if someone crosses your path with great needs, you may lend a hand. If you currently find yourself in great need, I want to tell you that Jesus is with you and that the storm you're going through will soon blow over. May God bless you and remind you that it is Jesus who can give us hope, purpose, and life. If this video has been a blessing for you, we want to encourage you to visit our website listed here. We have a lot of free materials that will be of great help and spiritual growth for you. Please contact us, for we are happy to serve you. God bless you.